what to use, different layout ideas, many examples, and more. Let's talk all about farms in Animal Crossing. Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel. In today's video, I would like to continue our little guide series with a video all around farms. They're pretty much one of my favorite area ideas simply for the sheer amount of variations and styles that they come in, and you can therefore find them on pretty much every single one of my islands. So today we will take a look at possible layout ideas as well as all the different things that you can have growing in your island. We'll chat about some different combinations and aesthetics, and I will also show you a bunch of different examples. A quick side note, I recently started a new channel called Sparksby Unwind where I will upload cozy, no commentary videos like island flattening either as a time-lapse or real-time, as well as some garden galaxy decorating and much more. So if that sounds interesting to you, make sure you're subscribed. And now, without further ado, let's go ahead and dive into the video. The first thing I would like to chat about is possible layout ideas. This will probably not be a full list, but I hope it shows you the possibilities and then lets you explore what works best for the style of your island. As a truly natural option, you could, for example, just plant whatever it is that you want, we'll chat about that in just a bit, right there on the grass. It might seem slightly messy at first, but when there's multiples of the same thing along with some more farmy bits all around it, you quickly achieve a cohesive look. I like to do this with pumpkin patches, for example, and I can also imagine the same thing working well for little flower fields, kind of like when you drive past a flower farm IRL that lets you pick your own flowers. So for this one, you don't have to worry at all about any pathing or codes. Just plant away, maybe fade the crops out towards the edges and incorporate some details in between, and you're pretty much good to go. The next option I would say is closest to very typical farm layouts that we know and love from games such as Stardew Valley and maybe even Fae Farm now. In these games, you usually plant your crops in patches to be able to water them best. So why not copy that style to Animal Crossing as well? These can be different sizes ranging from a small 2x2 patch to something more typical like a 3x3 to pretty much any size really. You could then put a tiny path like wooden planks in between the different patches, or maybe even a single stripe of water which can represent an irrigation system. The same look could also be achieved using a single tile custom design that looks like water. In this case, I used a light dirt path with a water coat on top. Or if you want the patches closer together, you could also change between the light and dark dirt pathing. Sand would also be an option, however I do find that it often doesn't quite fit. These could be set up symmetrically along a path, or you can also just sprinkle them as single patches all throughout your island, maybe almost kind of like fillers. And the shapes are of course completely up to you. You could do squares like just shown, or also opt for more rectangular shapes. You could also take the patch idea and pretty much create any size and shape that you want in a complete asymmetrical way. I've actually done this a few times where I set aside like a bigger farm area and then I did different sizes and shapes of dirt patches with different crops planted on them. With a little winding path in between, this can look absolutely gorgeous and give you a bit more of a natural look compared to the very organized version from before. And of course, you don't have to make small patches, but you could also go ahead and create one big dirt patch. Either plant the same type of crop, similar to kind of the first idea, I could definitely imagine this for like a big pumpkin patch, or recreate different patch shapes by planting the crops in specific shapes, either in line or also different patches, or you can be more quote-unquote messy and give it more of a community garden feeling. I also found this version on Pinterest that had rounded edges on the dirt path for their pumpkin patch, and I thought this looks super cute as well. And then the other thing I love to do, and I mean love to do, you'll see that later, is stripes. And there's a ton of options here, so let's try and organize these. Option number one is to use one type of path like the dark dirt and then create stripes with always like a tile of space in between. This could either be used for filler decorations such as flowers, weeds, or more, or you could use the space to incorporate some farm decorations like seed bags, shovels, barrels, and so on. And of course, this can also be used for yet again an irrigation system. Alternatively, you can switch between the in-game pathings like the light and the dark dirt, and then use either the same crop like pretty much everywhere, or also switch between different ones per line. The look of this can also be completely changed depending on whether you create this as a more symmetrical and organized version or not. So you could set up all the stripes in exactly the same length, maybe even along both sides of a path, or you could also make them all different lengths and this way fit them into even the most awkward spaces. This way is probably my personal favorite. When there's especially big farms and long stripes, I like to add a little break in between to include some type of item, like a shovel for example, and I often use this style of decorating to make it fit my path shape. Any of the options I just mentioned could also be created in a vertical fashion. That way, for example, you can create a big symmetrical shape with vertical stripes, or also do the more random looking ones in a vertical fashion. And these stripes can also be created using custom designs. Now, since nothing can be planted on top of custom designs, you could alternate between a row of planted crops and then the custom designed dirt, and then use this space to add more decorations. And once again, of course, any of the techniques from before can pretty much be used here. Either make them all the same length for a more organized look, or alternate and let it look a bit more natural. And once again, even create them all in a vertical fashion. Many custom designed pathings actually have a single tile version that works for this. This dirt version is probably my favorite. And the last option that I want to mention today is individual tiles. You can either create a kind of a checkered design or chessboard, if you will, so you can alternate between the different in-game dirt, like light dirt and dark dirt per tile, or always alternate between using the in-game dirt and not using pathing at all. Or you can also take a more free approach with this and spread the in-game pathing tiles a little more randomly. Along with planted crops and fillers, this can also turn into a beautiful, cohesive farm. Now that you found the perfect shape for your farm, let's also think about what kind of farm you want to create. Obviously, we have all those beautiful crops at our disposal. You can plant potatoes, wheat, sugarcane, carrots, tomatoes, and pumpkins in 4 different variations. Sugarcane specifically could also pose as corn. I've combined them with yellow hyacinths before to kind of drive that point across. There's also the mushrooms that appear around trees during fall that can be used for a farm, along with the mush stools for extra big mushrooms. Or you could use the turnips that Daisy May sells to create a turnip patch. You can also use all of the different flower types and colors to create flower farms, or even use some of them to pretend to be something else. White hyacinths, for example, can be used to look like a little cotton farm. Red pansies, windflowers, and cosmos that you ran through look somewhat like strawberries, whereas blue windflowers, pansies, or roses you ran through could kind of pose as blueberries. Purple flowers in combination with the grape hat and some second stage hardwood trees can even look like a vineyard. I also find that pansy sprouts kind of look like the green bit of the turnips, so combining those with the turnips makes a full-blown turnip farm. Little side note, this probably looks better with green grass. I'll show you a version of this later on. Just be careful about these ones because turnips will rot and flowers do continue to grow on the mainland, so these have to be specifically prepared for either photos or a dream address. I also love using shrubs either as a standalone on a farm or as little fillers in between the crops and flowers. Especially before the 2.0 update was out, the community got really creative and used some items to pose as different crops or flowers, and truth be told, I love them to this day. Hyacinth lamps, windflower fans, tulip surprise boxes, and mum cushions can, for example, be used as giant flowers, whereas the white mum cushions even somewhat look like cauliflower. The tree's bounty lamp in red looks a little bit like tomatoes, or now that we have those, maybe like some type of berries. The beach ball, obviously as watermelons. And I also used to see tons of potted plants and flowers as crops, such as the cacao tree, anthurium plant, or moss ball. You can also use a few more magical items, such as the star fragments or nova lights, the glowing moss, or even the gyroids to create some type of farm. At the end of the day, pretty much anything can be used for farms probably. You might just have to come up with a little storyline to surround it. I briefly mentioned fillers before, which kind of leads us to the next aspect that I want to chat about, and that is how full you make your farms. Because even by incorporating some variety with that, you can achieve very different styles. Here is what I mean by that. You could either go ahead and fill all the tiles on your established layout with the crop or item of your choice. For ease of showing this, I'll be using orange pumpkins. And even with every tile filled, you would still have some more options in case you're using the planted crops, since you can decide whether they should all hold 3 produce or maybe just 2 or 1, and then mix and match those. How many crops they hold is influenced by how often you water them, by the way. Alternatively, Alternatively, you could also go ahead and plant your crops just every other tile and then fill the gaps in with either weeds, shrubs, flowers, and of course items. When using the pumpkin specifically, you can use the spooky items and just turn those backwards so it also looks like produce. If you're struggling with what to use for fillers, I will also be linking my filler guide for you down below. Now those were a bunch of basic ideas for your layout, type of farm, and setup. Of course, just by alternating the color scheme that you're using, these can fit pretty much any island theme or aesthetic. Let me now show you the different farm variations that I have done before to show you how I have implemented and combined these things before. These will be grouped by islands, and all the information regarding those, such as island tour, dream address, and custom designs, can be found on my website sparksby.com. On Neverland, I created a little green mum farm using a dirt patch and then planting the mums in a checkered pattern. The pumpkin patch I used no path at all, different types of pumpkins, and also different items as fillers. My hyacinth farm was set up in stripes with a custom designed dirt pathing in between, and then I used hyacinth lamps and butterflies to fill the spaces. I also made a green tree farm on this island with some checkered single tile dirt patches and another small pumpkin patch, once again using a dirt patch. The coffee bean farm I did actually had vertical dirt stripes this time with a mixture of shrubs and cacao trees and items. Offline was kind of a farm themed island, and so it held quite a few variations. The pumpkin patch by the entrance, for example, was once again done with no in-game dirt pathing whatsoever and just had a plank pathing going through the middle. A flower farm using the tulip surprise boxes was done using the chessboard pattern. For my lavender farm, I did the dirt stripes and then added items in between. My bee farm once again had the chessboard pattern, this time with flowers on every tile. I also did a little farm by my house using dark flowers that I planted every other tile using my beloved striped dirt design. A little farm I did for Flurry combined mum cushions as cauliflower as well as sugarcane and used both the vertical stripe setup as well as a patch. And then the pumpkins planted next to her house once again used no dirt path. This time, however, were kept in a bit of a color scheme. The main farm by Nate and Prince's house was made using different sized patches and also adding a little windy path in between. And I also planted the pumpkins kind of in lines on their dirt patch. For the melon farm, I used a dirt patch with a custom design on top of it. And I also utilized the strawberry and blueberry idea from earlier, this time using the custom designed dirt pathing in between. On Equilibrio, I made a bee farm using the single tiles and kind of spread them out a little bit more randomly. The flower garden and spring was done with dirt patches and then planting one type of flower in a certain color scheme. And then the big main farm in the fall themed area was once again done using those different sized dirt patches and then a plank path in between. And I used a variety of different crops and items for this one. I also made some farms on my winter themed island, which was a tree farm using the dirt patch with some shrubs and a path in between. And then I also did some color focused flower farms in front of some houses using the single tile dirt patches, once focusing on purple and once in pink, and just randomly spread those around. Naporia held some farm islands, so I did some waterscaping to end up with these floating islands, and then I used my beloved stripe design to fit that shape and planted together pumpkins and also sugarcane and potatoes. The flower farm by Dina's house was made using the single tile dirt and just spreading those around pretty randomly, and then I used white and green flowers mixed with the tulip surprise boxes and also the festivali lamps. Here I wanted the entire farm thing to blend in a little bit better with the surroundings. For my city themed island, I made some messy community gardens, once using the stripes kind of with different crops per stripe, and the other once again on a floating island, this time kind of planting the crops more randomly around. And then it shouldn't come as a surprise that I used a bunch of different farms on my fall and farm themed island. Once again, we'll start with a pumpkin patch by the entrance. I used no dirt underneath and I just spread a whole bunch of different weeds and items in between to make it look more detailed. I also used this very same idea around my own house. Then I also made some more crop specific farms as fillers throughout the island, always using the dirt lines and varying crops. I also made a big flower garden using the dirt stripes and planted one type and color of flower per stripe, along with some butterflies. The big main farm, once again, was made using the different patches and crops with a plank path in between. Close to my neighborhood, I also made an actual like stripey looking farm. So once again, I used the in-game dirt pathings for the stripe design, but then also planted one specific crop per stripe. For the pumpkin fair, I spread around some individual tiles, but honestly, you barely see them. So this is basically just another pumpkin patch. And then last but not least, for this island, I also made a sunken farm. So I kind of had this sunken area and then waterscaped all around it, and then just kind of went in and randomly planted all the crops and added a couple of farming items. So it kind of just got this like abandoned farm type of vibe. On Meliora, I made a magical tomato farm. So I used tomatoes in combination with the mush stools, once again with the in-game dirt pathing. I also used this very same layout again for a purple flower farm, this time with hyacinth lamps in between. And then I also did two big farms for the yellow section. One was once again with the in-game pathing, however this time I used sand and the light dirt and mixed together yellow flowers with glowing moss. And then with the other, I once again did the random in-game tiles. For the pink section, I mixed together pink windflowers with the flower fans. And then for the orange section, I also did a few different versions using my beloved layout, one with pumpkins and carrots, and then one with some more flowers. And I also did another bee farm in the center where the colors kind of started mixing together. For Zelina's farmhouse on Storybrooke, we did a mixture of the horizontal and vertical layout, and the red rose farm by Belle's house kind of got those individual tiles once again. I'm also using farms on my current islands. On Calathea, I made a research area that kind of is like a little bit of a farm. I made a dirt patch with some custom designed pathing on it. Then I used the tulip surprise boxes and continued to plant tulips outside of the area. The big shrub area that I did is also some kind of a farm, this time I guess using diagonal lines. And even though I tore it down again, I also want to show you this clip of a farm I did using sugarcane along with green mums and black tulips, and then putting the red mushrooms in between to give it more of a magical vibe. On Encanto, I tried to create some corn farms. There's one in front of resident services using the striped dirt path, and there's also this big corn farm where I basically planted everything without the dirt path, but I completely filled this up with either crops or flowers. And then the coastal island actually also has a couple of different options. I made flower farms for Gala where I focused on specific flower colors and did stripes of the in-game pathing, once again with the light dirt and sand this time. And then the farm area for Alice is kind of using a bunch of color coordinated crops, and they're all using my beloved dirt stripe layout. I used mum cushions as cauliflowers with shrubs and other items in between. There's also some pumpkins and potatoes. We made a little cotton farm with sugarcane and white hyacinths, and we also started a little turnip farm. This time you can actually see it with the green. As you can see, I use farms a lot on my islands, but they really are amazing to include just because of the sheer amount of variety. Every area could be farm themed, and yet they would probably all look completely different. Sometimes I catch myself thinking like, I can't add another farm to this island. But you know what? Why not? And with that, thank you all so much for watching today. I hope that this was able to spark some ideas for you. Make sure that you're subscribed for all the Animal Crossing content, and then I hope you have an amazing time until I see you in my next video. Bye everyone!